So today I'm going to be interviewing my dad, who is a pastor, and as you guys just saw, those clips that I showed, or I put before this, so those were some clips from a worship night at St. Francis University here in Fort Wayne. It is a Catholic school, and so these were taken Tuesday night, and it's now Friday. So Monday night, there was a big worship night, and my brother's over here in the background, being weird. So there's a big worship night, and it was really super cool. My dad went to the first one on Monday night. And so what had happened, was there were like Gen Zers there, and millennials, I think they're called, so like the older generation. The students came up, and the adults prayed for them, and then the students prayed for the adults. It was just super cool. So my dad went to that, and he's trying everything in his power to mess it up.
I did not make him do that.
So yeah, so we can get right into it. Dad, if you wanna. Well, first I'll explain this a little bit. So one of the videos I took, there was a woman who was sharing, she had just had a vision, and she was saying that it was like someone was being jolted awake, like from the dead, and that was super cool. And then I think it was her husband who came up after and was speaking about something, so you'll see those, you've seen those obviously. But yeah, and there should be another one that I'll put in at the end, so yeah. So Dad?
Hey.
Come sit. This is my dad. You might have seen him, heard him in some videos. Okay, so who are you?
I'm her dad.
What's your name?
My name is Matt.
Okay, and how long have you been a pastor for?
25 years-ish. Depending on if you're counting.
Okay.
Like youth ministry stuff. So
Yes.
I started when I was like 20.
Cool. Okay, so
I'm older than that now.
So do you want to explain a little bit about kind of what's going on in Fort Wayne, and like spiritually and Christianity wise?
Sure. Couple of things to know. Thing one is that a group of churches and a group of leaders put together a 24/7 prayer room in the heart of the Electric Works, which is a like $500 million development mixed-use space at an old GE plant in the downtown area. And so that's been going for a little over a month with nonstop prayer. And the second thing to note is that there are people on the ground here who have a heart for prayer and worship and being in the presence of God. So they've been cultivating space for for those things for a few years now. One of those guys works. His family has a ministry called the Gospel House, and he over the last couple of weeks has been trying to hold some different times and spaces in response to what's been going on at Asbury University. And he has they had a worship night last Friday at Sunrise Church way out on Illinois Road, and on Monday he's got some friendships over with some folks at St. Francis University. So Monday night they had a night to just say, hey, we're going to worship, we're going to pray, and we're going to be still, and we're going to see what God might have for us at this time. So they did that at the chapel at St. Francis, and that went. That's, I think, in the clips that you're showing and you're describing. That went kind of crazy great. And they met again on Tuesday night. I was at both of those gatherings, Monday night for most of it, Tuesday night for a bit of it with Annan. Yeah, it's fun to see some stuff going down.
So for those who don't know what's going on at Asbury University, can you explain what is happening?
Yeah, there's been a lot of different stuff going down in the media about the whole thing. Lots of people weighing in and commenting on whether it's like the best thing ever or the worst thing ever, or whether it's good or healthy, or maybe negatively influencing students at Asbury and beyond. But basically, the mechanics of the whole thing were that the students at Asbury have chapel 3 times a week. It's mandatory, they have to go. There have been some reports from folks that I work with, from the chaplain at Asbury, saying like, this is not something the students are crazy about. They go because they have to go, and they don't go back when it's done. So 2 Wednesdays ago, there was a chapel service at 10 a.m. Usually lasts about 45 minutes or an hour or so. Some students stuck around afterward, just a few students, like maybe a dozen, maybe. And just sort of hung around afterwards and were quietly praying amongst themselves. And other students felt, they said in their own testimonies, said that they just felt like maybe they needed to go back to the chapel after their classes, after their like late morning classes or afternoon classes, and all of a sudden, like, everybody's going back to the chapel. And by the late afternoon, evening time, the chapel was packed out, and prayer was going on. I'm not sure exactly what time worship started happening again, but the students were like, do we have any worship leaders who can go back up there and lead some songs and lead some worship? So so that started on 2 Wednesdays ago. So like 2 weeks, 2 days. And it has been going on ever since. After a few days of that, which is, like I said, all student-led, after a few days of that happening, people were like, something's really going on here. So people from around the area started to go and check it out, and then it just started growing, and now the cat is playing with paper in the corner. So now people, like, literally all over the country and all over the world have been going to Asbury to check this whole thing out. I don't know, 4 or 5 days into it, they spilled over into other spaces where they could have a bunch of people on the campus, and so now they're routinely filling 5 different spaces, and there are lines waiting for hours to get into these different spaces. And there are now reports that some of this is spilling over to other colleges and ministries around the area and around the country. So Fort Wayne is meeting and having some of these prayer meetings in response to all of this, and so we're in the middle of it and we're seeing what's happening. That was a really long answer.
I like it though. So that's super cool. So moving on to kind of Fort Wayne. So some people have been saying, or like at the opening of the Fort Wayne Prayer Works, someone had mentioned that Fort Wayne was being considered a thin place. So what is a thin place?
A thin place is comes out of Celtic Christianity, which sort of has its roots in like I gotta have all these history dates. So it's largely thought to have been started by like St. Patrick in like the 400s, so like the 5th century, that type of thing, and just sort of blew up like crazy. And because in Ireland they were sort of in isolation from outside of the Roman Empire, so their version of Christianity was largely indigenous and Irish in character versus like a Romanized version of Christianity that was just sort of put into Ireland. So the characteristics of Irish Christianity, one of those things is that they are they're very tied to nature, tied to the land. So a lot of their imagery is around that: the 4-leaf clover, the wild goose, the circles and paths, and all of nature. And within this, they've always had a very spiritual character to themselves, being tied into nature. So when Christianity took hold, they just took their understanding of that and sort of put it into their faith, and that just became part of it. So they instead of seeing just a spiritual nature of a spiritual characteristic in nature, now they're seeing the Spirit of God expressing Himself through nature. And what they would say is that there are different places, Northumbria, Iona, Lindisfarne, and a bunch of these other places where monastic groups started, where prayer has been happening for hundreds and thousands of years. And they saw these places as places where the space between heaven and earth, the space between God and us, the space between the eternal and the mortal are very thin, right? So there are places where you just sort of notice and can encounter God and the Spirit and heaven and earth coming together in a deeper way. powerful way. And so one of the folks, Chris Norman, who is sort of the lead visionary on the prayer room for Fort Wayne, is calling Fort Wayne a thin place. He has heard this from people, and he has announced this, sort of prophetically over the Church of Fort Wayne and over the prayer room.
That's super cool. Yeah.
I don't know if that gives the...
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Fort Wayne has over 100 churches, and it's been called the City of Churches, correct?
Yeah. Correct you just slightly.
Yeah.
The City of Fort Wayne has about 360 churches, and we have about 100 churches involved in the prayer.
About 100 churches
there you
involved
go.
in that. So what does it mean for Fort Wayne to be called a thin place, or be considered a thin place?
I mean, I think that what it means is that we have something going on here that we have to figure out what we want to do with. Like, how's the church going to respond to this? And are we going to be people who we're going to be people who cultivate that, or are we going to be people who are nervous about that? All kinds of people come with all kinds of different ideas about what happens with spirituality, and some people get really nervous about that, some people get really excited about it, and then there's a whole bunch of people in between. I, for one, am wanting to cultivate that and see that become even more of a powerful characteristic of the Church of Fort Wayne at large.
So how has his ringtone?
Best phone ring ever.